Hello friends, in today's video we are going to see brand new chapter, that is networking. Okay, so we will start with it. Java is practically a synonym for internet programming since it is a worldwide use. Okay, on any machine it is portable, it is interchangeable. You can program on one PC and you can run that Java program on any PC in worldwide. Okay, provided you're using applets or character oriented streams other than byte oriented streams. There are number of reasons of this, not the least of which is its ability to generate secure cross platform portable code. Okay, more than cross-platform portable code. There are so many reasons. So it is practically synonym for internet programming. But most Java is the premier language for network programming are the classes defined in the java.net package. Okay, so because of java.net package, it is worldwide used. They provide an easy to use means by which programmers of all skill levels can access network resources. Okay, programmers beginner level, intermediate level, and high level, advanced level. Okay, all they only need to understand how java.net package is used in your application, in your program. Okay, so it is very convenient to use, so it is not very hard to understand, hard to remember, hard to learn. You can, or any programmer can directly use it. So in this chapter, we will explore java.net package. It is important to emphasize that networking is very large and at times complicated topic. Okay, when it is limited up to only your PC, it is very easy to understand, but it is for worldwide use. It is very large topic and at times complicated. It is not possible for this course to discuss all of the capabilities in java.net. Okay, so we will see only basic details regarding java.net package, not the complete details. And we will only see the several of its core classes and interfaces. Those are used worldwide. First of all, we will see networking basics. Okay, it is very useful to review some key networking concepts and terms. At the core of Java's networking support is the concept of socket. Okay, so basically socket is the basic thing. If you understand socket supports networking in Java programming. Socket identifies the endpoint in the network. Okay, socket paradigm was part of the 4.2 BSD Berkeley Unix release in the early 1980s. Okay, so when it was introduced in 1980s. The term Berkeley socket is also used because introduction or invention of socket is done in the Berkeley Unix. Sockets are at the foundation of modern networking because a socket allows a single computer to serve many different clients at once as well as to serve many different types of information. Okay. So single computer foundation of modern networking because a single computer to serve many different clients at once as well as to serve many different types of information. This is accomplished through the use of port, which is numbered socket on a particular machine. Okay, so first of all you have to understand what is socket, and secondly it is accomplished through the use of port, and which is numbered socket. So every port has a unique identification number, which is not repeated twice or more than once. Okay. Server process is said to listen to a port until a client connects to it. We have already seen in our college, if you have networking in your theory of your college, networking subject, it was in engineering also, computer engineering, hardware and software engineering plus any type of computer science course, if you have done it in college or externally, you are already familiar with its usage. Okay, so you have already learned about it, what is port and what is port number and how it is used. Okay, and uh, if you are not familiar with that, you can you can also be familiar over here. Server is allowed to accept multiple clients connected to the same port number, although each session is unique. Okay, so multiple clients can access the same port number at same time. To manage multiple client connection, a server process must be multi-threaded or have some other means of multiplexing the simultaneous input output. Okay, so that parallel processing can be done successfully by the usage of server. Okay, because if at a time, if one server will wait for the another client to come and waste the time which is already there, it may be very much critical to operate on internet. Okay, so for that purpose, server should be having the multi-threaded functionality. Socket communication takes place via a protocol. Internet protocol or IP is a low-level routing protocol that breaks data into small packets and sends them to an address across a network, which does not guarantee to deliver said packets to the destination. Okay, low-level routing protocol that breaks data into small packets. Okay, and sends them to an particular address across a network, which does not guaranteed to deliver said packets to the destination. Okay, in short, what does it mean? Small packets, complete data will be broken into small packets. Okay, and it is not guaranteed that each and every package sequentially one after another goes to the destination. So you just have to trust blindly, otherwise you have to ensure yourself that this is not guaranteed thing. Okay, transmission control protocol is a higher level protocol that manages to robustly string together these packets, sorting and retransmitting them as necessary to reliably transmit data. So what this transmission control protocol will do, this robustly string together these complete chokes or simple small packages, sort them and retransmit them. Okay, so that packets will be reliably transmitted over the network to the destination. And third protocol is user datagram protocol, sits next to TCP and can be used directly to support fast connectionless unreliable transport of packets. Okay, so it sits next to transmission control protocol and it can be used directly, okay, over internet to support fast connectionless unreliable. TCP is reliable and UDP is unreliable. Once a connection has been established, a higher level protocol ensures, which is dependent on which port you are using. Okay, higher level protocol ensues, which is dependent upon which port you are using. So TCP/IP reserves the lower 1024 ports for specific protocols, and this cannot be repeated for some other purpose. Many of this will seem familiar to you if you have spent any time in internet. Port number 24 for FTP, 23 for Telnet, 25 for email, 43 for GUI, 79 is for finger, 80 is for HTTP. HTTP, I think you have already familiar with. Okay, so it is very common or famous protocol 80. Have you seen like this 8080 colon and then www.xyz.com? 119 is for net news and the list goes on. Okay, most of them maybe if you are already familiar with it. It is up to each protocol to determine how a client should interact with the code. HTTP is a protocol that web browsers and servers use to transfer hypertext pages and images. So hypertext is like HTML files. Okay, so every protocol, every protocol will determine its usage and its interaction with the code. Okay, and port numbers maybe most of the times you are familiar with them. It is a unique, quite simple protocol for basic page browsing web browser. Here it how it works. When a client requests file from HTTP server, an action known and hit is simply sends the name of the file in a special format to the predefined port and reads back the contents of the file. Okay, so if particularly a PNG file located on my personal server, I am entering that .xyz.com slash file1.png. I hit enter. After I hit enter, that file will be read. That first of all, I will send that particular address to fetch the file. Then that file will be read, and when I will hit enter, and when that file is got from the internet, I will be able to view that file. Server also responds with a status code to tell the client if it is if it is not able to fulfill your request or fetch the file or load the file, etc., etc. So each status code is like error code. If it is successfully read or loaded, it will be having specific successful code or as well as specific errorness code. A key component of the internet is address. Okay, so you have to understand address. Every computer on the internet has one. An internet address is a number that uniquely identifies each computer on the network. Whoever is connected to the internet will have a particular identification number, which is address. Originally, all internet addresses consisted of 32-bit values organized as 4 8-bit values. Okay. Previously means originally all internet addresses had only 32-bit values, and that was having 4 parts: 8 bits, 8 bits, 8 bits, and 8 bits. This address type was specified by Internet Protocol version 4. Okay, previously. A new addressing scheme, that is IPv6 Internet Protocol version 6, has come into play, and it uses the 128 bit value instead of 32 bit to represent an address organized into 8 16-bit chunks. Okay, so previously it was having 4 8-bit chunks. Nowadays, after IPv6 Internet Protocol version 6, there are 8 16-bit chunks like 16 16 16 16 8 times, that is 128. Although there are several reasons for and advantages to IPv6, the main one that it supports a much larger address space than does IPv4. Okay, larger address space than IPv4 means IPv4 was supporting only 32 bits, and it is maybe 32, 32, 32, 4 times higher than the IPv4 address support. To provide a backward compatibility with IPv4, low-level 32 bits of IPv6 address can contain a valid IPv4 address. Okay, what is backward compatibility? Okay, what does that mean? If your browser is not supporting the IPv6 or your PC does not supporting it, okay, so whatever, like we have already seen, what is legacy code? Legacy code is the code before updation. So before IPv6 introduction or usage, there was IPv4 available. Okay, and those PCs, those browsers who do not support this type of IPv6 address, for that PC or that Mozilla Firefox, etc., etc., previous versions, they will support first 82 bits. Low order 32 bits means uh, first 32 bits of an IPv6 address, a valid IPv4 address. Okay, so that they also be able to be part of the World Wide Web. Thus, IPv4 is upwardly compatible with IPv6. When using Java, you won't normally need to worry about whether IPv4 or IPv6 addresses are used because Java handles everything for you. Okay. The numbers of IP address describe the network hierarchy one after the another. The name of the internet address called domain name describes the machine's location in a namespace. Okay. So that domain name and then machine location and everything that will be read right to left, not left to right. Like www.abzon.com is the com domain reserved for US commercial sites, commercial for only commercial of United States. It's called Osborne after the company name, and the www identifies the server for web request. Okay. So first is your com domain. Then it is in the com domain called Osborne. After that, www is for web request. At internet domain name is mapped to an IP addresses by the domain name service. Okay. This enables users to work with domain names, but the internet operates on IP address. Domain name service users. Domain naming service enables users to work with domain names, but the internet does not operate upon the domain names. Domain name service just is introduced just for mapping purpose. Okay, actual operation is done of internet is on IP address. Okay, the networking classes and interfaces. Java supports TCP/IP both by extending the already established Stream IO interface introduced in chapter 19 and by adding the features required to build IO objects across the network. Okay, so how Java support that TCP/IP? First is extending the already established Stream IO interface. Okay, and second by adding the features required to build IO objects across the network. Okay, so already established Stream IO interface we have seen in the previous chapter, and second thing, new features are added to build input output over the internet. Java supports both the TCP and UDP protocol families. TCP is for reliable stream based IO across the network. Okay, reliable stream based IO for TCP. UDP support a simpler, hence faster point-to-point datagram oriented model. Okay, which is unreliable. The classes contained in the Java net packages are authenticator, cache request, cache response, content handler, cookie handler, key manager by Java 6 datagram packet, inet address, inet 6 address, inet socket address, interface address added by Java 6, jar URL connection, multicast socket, net permission, server socket address, socket implement, socket permission, URL, datagram socket implement, IMPL, HTTP cookie by Java 6, HTTP URL connection, IDN added by Java 6, inet 4 address, network interface, password authentication, proxy selector, response cache, secure cache response, URL class loader, URL connection, URL decoder, URL encoder, URL stream handler. Okay. Now we will see the interfaces. Java .NET packages interfaces are listed here. Content handler factory interface, cookie policy interface, cookie store, both are added by Java 6. Datagram socket implement factory, file name map socket implement factory, socket option URL stream handler factory. These are all interfaces. We will examine the main networking classes and show several examples that apply to them in the sections that follow. Once you understand the basic classes, you will be able to easily explore the others on your own. Okay, so that is nothing to worry about. Like the other previous sessions we have already seen, Java is very much simple. Okay, unlike C and C++, which was very complicated languages, Java is very much simpler to be understood by all levels of programmers. Okay, so you just have to focus on the basic networking classes and interfaces. Once you will understand it, you will understand all the remaining your own. Okay, INET address. The INET address is a class used to encapsulate both the numerical IP address and the domain name for that address. Okay, you interact with this class by using the name of an IP host, which is more convenient and understandable than its IP address. Okay, so INET address is a combination of numerical IP address plus domain name of that address. Okay, and if you want to interact with this class, how you will interact it? By using the name of the IP host, which is more convenient than the number. Okay, because to remember number it is bit tricky and bit complicated, but to understand and remember the name of the IP host, it is very much easier. The INET address class hides the number inside. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, like this www.amazon.com. Remembering this name is very much easier rather than 192.168 and etc. and etc. Okay, this type of addresses are very much harder to remember. Okay, INET address can handle both IPv4 and v6 addresses. Okay, factory methods of this class. INET address class has no visible constructors. First of all, to create an INET address object, you have to use one of the available factory methods. So what are the factory methods? Now we will see. Factory methods are merely convention whereby static methods in the class returns an instance of the class. Okay, this is done in lieu of overloading a constructor with various parameter lists. When having unique method names makes the result much clearer. Okay. INET address first of all have no visible constructors. Second, for that you have to use the factory method. This thing you have to remember. What is factory method? Where static methods in a class return instance or object of that particular class, and how it is achieved by overloading a constructor with various parameter lists. When having unique method names makes the result much clearer. Okay, various parameters to the constructor will be passed and method's name are unique so that your output or result is much clearer. Commonly used INET address factory methods are static INET address get localhost host throws unknown host exception. Static INET address get by name string host name throws unknown host exception. Static INET address get all by name string host name throws unknown host exception. Okay, the get local host method simply returns the INET address that represent the local host. Get by name returns INET address for host name passed to it. Okay, so INET address how will be achieved? You will be passing the name here. String host name you will be passing over here. Okay, if these methods are unable to resolve the host name, unknown host exception will be thrown, and you will if you will do such things in your browser, this this address cannot be resolved. This type of error you can see on your HTML page. Okay, it is common for on the internet. It is common for a single name to be used to represent several machines. In the world of web servers, this is one way to provide some degree of scaling. Okay, so same name can be there existing for multiple machines. Get all by name factory method returns an array of INET addresses that represent all of the address that a particular name resolves to. Okay, get all by name returns array of INET addresses. Okay, you have to give all the addresses in bracket and it will return array of INET addresses that represent the addresses that particular name resolves to, and also throw unknown host exception if it can't resolve the name to at least one address. Okay, at least one address. If it is unable to resolve at least one address, it will throw unknown host exception. INET address also includes the factory method getByAddress, which takes an IP address and returns the INET address object. And by that object, you can get a host name. Either IPv4 or IPv6 addresses can be used in this case. We will see now the example of this INET address, which will print the addresses and names of the local machine and two well-known internet websites. Okay, get localhost address, it will print osborne.com, get by name, its address is stored over here in INET address object. Okay, and INET address get all by name www.nva.com. Okay, first of all, this address will be placed, put, and then get all by name array is written and stored in SW. For that particular length, it will print the output. Okay, output produced is different. Default address is this one, osborne.com is this one, and NVA's two values are here, nva.com 64.5.96.214, www.nva.com 64.596.216. Okay, then next is instance method. INET address class has several other methods which can be used on the objects returned by the methods. Okay, so whatever object as output you are getting, that is returned, you will be having those so that you can perform all other extra operations. So more commonly used methods are boolean equals object other, returns true if this object has the same internet address as other. Okay, byte get address returns a byte array that represents the object's IP address in network byte order. String get host address returns a string that represents the host address associated with the INET address object. String get host name returns a string that represents the host name associated with the INET address object. Boolean is multicast address returns true if this address is a multicast address, otherwise it returns false. String to string returns a string that lists the host name and the IP address for convenience. Okay, INET addresses are looked up in a series of hierarchically cached servers. So multiple servers are hierarchically cached, or one after the another, one below the another. That means that your local computer might know particular name to IP address mapping automatically, such as for itself and nearby servers. Okay, your local computer or your PC might know particular name to IP address mapping automatically, such as for itself and nearby servers. For other names, it may ask a local DNS server for IP address information. Okay, some information might be known and some might be not. If that server does not have a particular address, it can go to a remote site and ask to switch. Okay, like hierarchically cached servers, like from your PC to DNS server and from DNS server to its above level server. Okay, remote site. So your PC might be have knowledge of your some name to IP address mapping, maybe not. For other, those it does not know, it may ask a local DNS server how they are mapped, its name to IP address mapping information. If that DNS server is not also understood what is that, it will ask to a remote site and ask for it. This can continue all the way up to the root server. This process might take a long time if that address is not resolved or until that address is not resolved. So it is wise to structure your code so that your cache IP address information locally rather than look it up repeatedly, because this is time consuming process. So IP address information should be cached. So every time it will be saved or loaded faster. Okay. if you are like in your browser, if you are daily looking for any particular site, say Amazon or Flipkart, it will be cached, it will be stored in memory. Okay, so not every time your mobile or your PC has to go to particular site. Okay, so this way you have to structure your code. INET 4 and INET 6 addresses. Beginning with version 1.4, Java has included support for IPv6 also. Okay, so afterwards 1.4, Java has included support for IPv6 type of address. Two subclasses of INET addresses were declared, created, INET 4 and INET 6 address. INET 4 address represents a traditional style IPv4 address. INET 6 address encapsulates a new style IPv6 address. Because they are all subclasses of INET address reference can refer to either of them. This is one way that Java was able to add IPv6 functionality without breaking existing code for IPv4. Okay, or adding many more classes. For the most part, you can simply use the INET address. If you don't want to understand what is INET 4 and INET 6, you can directly go for INET address class. When working with IP addresses, because it can accommodate both styles. TCP/IP client socket. Okay, TCP/IP sockets are used to implement reliable bidirectional persistent point-to-point stream-based connections between hosts on the internet. First is reliable. Reliable is the most important thing. It is bidirectional persistent point-to-point stream-based connection between the host on the internet to your PC or mobile. A socket can be used to connect Java's input-output to other programs that may reside either on local machine or any other machine on the internet. Okay, so socket usage is your connection of your Java's input output system to other program on your World Wide Web or on the same machine. Applets may only establish socket connection back to the host from which the applet was downloaded. Okay, this restriction exists because it would be dangerous for applets loaded through a firewall to have access to any arbitrary machine. Okay, this is the exception for that. Exception is applets may only establish socket connection back to the host from which applet was downloaded. So this is the circular dependency like thing. Okay, it will connect to only that PC from which the applet was downloaded. This restriction exists because it would be dangerous for applet loaded through a firewall to have access to any arbitrary machine. There are two kinds of TCP sockets. One is for server, other is for client. Server socket class is designed to be a listener, which waits for clients to connect before doing anything. Okay, server socket, it has to listen first because clients are coming to it, which wait for the client to connect before doing anything. The server socket is for server, socket class is for client. It is designed to connect to server sockets and initiate protocol exchanges. What is the socket class? It is designed to connect to server socket and initiate protocol exchanges. Okay, so this is the client. So socket class is a client that will communicate or connect to a server socket class. Because client sockets are most commonly used by Java applications, they are examined here. The creation of socket object implicitly establishes a connection between client and server. Okay, implicitly it establishes connection between client and server. No methods or constructors that explicitly expose the details of establishing that connection. Okay, two constructors to create client socket string host name integer port throws unknown host exception IO exception creates a socket connected to the name host and port. Socket INET address IP address integer port throws IO exception creates a socket using a pre-existing INET address object and a port. Okay, socket defines several instance methods. For example, socket can be examined at any time for the address and the port information associated with it by use of following methods. Get INET address, return INET address, returns the INET address associated with the socket object. It returns null if the socket is not connected. Second is port integer, returns and remote port in integer format to which the invoking socket object is connected. Okay, it will be port number. It returns 0 if the socket is not connected. Get integer get local port returns the local port to which invoking socket object is bound. It will be a local port number. It returns -1 if the socket is not bound. Okay, so this way we have introduced the basic regarding your networking. Okay, in the next session we will go more detail, more beyond in this video, in this chapter. Okay, so till then, if you have not understood the basics regarding this, you can go back and practice it, or you can go back and see the video as many times as you need. Okay, so meet you in the next session with the new topics, new classes. Thank you so much.